discovered carved into the marble walls of a forgotten shrine near ancient Sparta. These words tell of Lysander, son of Agesilaos, and the Athenian servant whose silent suffering would awaken something long buried in a warrior's heart. What follows is neither myth nor legend, but the quiet truth of how compassion can bloom in the most barren soil of human indifference. Before we begin, subscribe now so you don't miss more stories like this one. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the courtyard of Lysander's estate, illuminating every crack in the weathered stone and every fold in the servants' worn chitons. Steam rose from the bronze basin where Theo, the Athenian slave, prepared his master's bath with movements that spoke of years spent perfecting the art of invisibility. His round frame moved with surprising grace for a man who carried the weight of too many meals eaten in secret shame and too many nights spent hungry by choice. Lysander emerged from his chambers, adjusting the bronze clasps of his leather corselet, his mind already focused on the day's training exercises with the younger warriors. The sight of his servant's broad back bent over the steaming water barely registered until a gust of wind lifted the slave's tunic higher than usual, revealing what lay beneath the rough wool. Lines, dozens of them, crisscrossing the man's flesh like a map of suffering drawn in scarred skin. Some old and faded to silver threads, others still bearing the dark purple of more recent wounds. They covered his back from shoulders to waist, a testament to pain endured in silence and cruelty accepted as inevitable as the changing seasons. Lysander's hand froze on his sword belt. In all the years Theo had served his household, purchased from an Athenian slave trader after the city's latest defeat, he had never seen beneath the carefully maintained facade of submission. The man who brought him wine and cleaned his armor and spoke only when spoken to carried upon his body the evidence of a brutality that made even a Spartan warrior's stomach clench. "Who did this to you?" Lysander asked, his voice cutting through the morning air like bronze through leather. Theo's movements stilled completely. The wooden ladle in his hand trembled, sending ripples across the bath water that caught the light like scattered coins. When he turned, his dark eyes held the desperate calculation of a man trying to determine whether truth would bring salvation or further suffering. "Many masters, Lord," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the distant sounds of the agora awakening. "Many years." And in that moment, something cracked open in Lysander's chest that he had not known was closed. The gymnasium fell silent as Lysander entered, his usual confident stride replaced by something more measured, more thoughtful. Young warriors who had been practicing their spear work paused to watch their instructor, sensing some invisible change in the man who had shaped their understanding of combat and honor. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that streamed through the high windows, and the smell of olive oil and sweat hung heavy in the air. But Lysander's mind remained fixed on the image of scarred flesh and the quiet dignity with which Theo had answered his question. Throughout the morning's drills, he found himself watching his students with new eyes, noting the way they treated the gymnasium slaves who cleaned their equipment and prepared their meals. The casual indifference, the thoughtless commands, the assumption that some men were born to serve and others to be served. When the training session ended and the younger warriors dispersed to their homes, Lysander remained behind, sitting on a stone bench worn smooth by generations of Spartan soldiers. The gymnasium slave who swept the floor, a thin man with graying hair and hands that shook slightly from old injuries, worked around him with the practiced invisibility of his kind. "What is your name?" Lysander asked suddenly. The slave dropped his broom, the wooden handle clattering against stone. He fell to his knees immediately, pressing his forehead to the floor in the universal posture of submission. "Nicias, Lord. Forgive me. I did not mean to disturb." "Stand up," Lysander commanded, but his voice carried none of its usual martial edge. "Tell me, Nicias, in your years of service, have you ever been beaten?" The old slave's eyes darted left and right as if seeking escape routes that did not exist. His mouth opened and closed twice before words emerged. "Only when I deserved it, Lord. Only when I failed in my duties." "And how often did you deserve it?" The question hung in the dusty air like incense smoke, and Nikias seemed to age another decade as he considered his answer. Finally, with the resignation of a man who had learned that honesty was sometimes the least dangerous option, he spoke. "More often than I could count, Lord. Less often than some might say I should have." Lysander studied the man's weathered face, seeing for the first time the network of small scars around his eyes and the way his left arm hung slightly crooked from some long-healed break. Here was another map of suffering, another testament to the casual cruelty that seemed to flow as naturally as water through the channels of Spartan society. That night, sleep eluded him entirely. The house felt different in the pre-dawn darkness, as if the very stones had absorbed the weight of Lysander's newfound awareness. He moved through the corridors like a ghost, padding silently on bare feet past the small alcoves where his household slaves slept on thin mattresses of straw and wool. Each snore, each restless movement, each whispered word in a dream reminded him of lives he had never considered worthy of consideration. He found Theo in the kitchen, already preparing the morning meal by the light of a single oil lamp. The Athenians' movements were precise and economical, born of years spent learning to anticipate needs before they were expressed. Bread dough rested under a damp cloth, olives soaked in brine. Wine was being mixed with water in careful proportions. "You rise early," Lysander observed, settling onto a wooden stool that groaned under his weight. Theo's hands paused in their work for just a moment before resuming their steady rhythm. "Sleep is a luxury for those who have earned it, Lord. And you have not earned it. I am Athenian, Lord. We lost the war." The simple statement carried layers of meaning that Lysander was only beginning to understand. Not just defeat in battle, but the systematic erasure of dignity that followed. Not just slavery, but the slow grinding down of the human spirit until even basic rest felt like an undeserved privilege. "Show me your back again," Lysander said quietly. This time Theo did not hesitate. He set down his knife and turned away, lifting his tunic to reveal the constellation of scars that had haunted Lysander's thoughts through the sleepless night. In the flickering lamplight, they seemed even more pronounced, telling stories of punishment that went far beyond any conceivable failure of service. "This one," Lysander said, pointing to a particularly thick scar that ran from shoulder blade to spine. "What did you do to earn this?" "I dropped the amphora of wine, Lord. It belonged to a merchant in Corinth who valued his possessions more than his servant's skin. And this?" He indicated a cluster of smaller marks near the man's right shoulder. I smiled at his daughter when she spoke kindly to me. He felt it showed insufficient respect for the natural order. Each answer fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of understanding through Lysander's mind. This was not the harsh but fair discipline he had always assumed slaves received when they transgressed. This was something far darker. The systematic breaking of human beings for the simple crime of being human. As dawn light began to seep through the kitchen's small window, Lysander made a decision that would change both their lives forever. The agora buzzed with the usual morning activity as Lysander made his way toward the slave market, his purposeful stride cutting through the crowds of merchants, citizens, and servants who filled the great square. Stone columns cast long shadows across the worn pavement, and the scent of fresh bread mixed with the less pleasant odors of unwashed bodies and animal waste. But his attention was focused entirely on the wooden platform where human lives were bought and sold like pottery or grain. Menandros, the slave trader, looked up from his ledger with the practiced smile of a man who had learned to read the desires of potential customers in the set of their shoulders and the weight of their purses. He was a thin man with oil-darkened hair and fingers that counted profit in every gesture. "Lysander, son of Agesilaos," he called out cheerfully. "What brings you to my humble establishment? Perhaps a young woman for your household, or a strong back for your fields?" "I wish to purchase the freedom of Theo of Athens," Lysander announced without preamble. "He serves in my household." The trader's smile flickered like a flame in wind. "His freedom? My lord, I'm afraid I don't understand. He is your property already. Why would you need to purchase what you already own?" "Because I intend to free him, completely." with full citizen rights and the protection of Spartan law. A strange silence fell over the immediate area as nearby citizens and slaves alike turned to stare at the young warrior. The concept of voluntarily freeing a slave was not unknown in Sparta, but it was rare enough to attract attention, and rarer still when done for no apparent reason of reward or favor. Menandros's practiced composure cracked entirely. "My lord, forgive me, but why? Has he performed some great service, saved your life in battle, uncovered a plot against your family? He has done nothing but endure what no man should have to endure," Lysander replied, his voice carrying across the square with the clarity of bronze striking bronze. "And I have done nothing but ignore suffering that was happening under my own roof." The trader's eyes darted nervously between Lysander and the growing crowd of onlookers. This was the kind of public spectacle that could draw unwanted attention from the ephors and the council of elders. Business was conducted quietly, efficiently, without philosophical complications. "The price for such a transaction would be considerable," he said carefully. "Theo is trained, experienced, valuable property. To grant him full citizenship rights, that requires not just silver, but sponsorship, testimony before the magistrates." "Name your price," Lysander interrupted, "and tell me what else is required." By the time the sun reached its zenith, papers had been signed, silver had changed hands, and the machinery of Spartan bureaucracy had been set in motion. But the hardest conversation still lay ahead. Theo knelt in the courtyard of Lysander's estate, his broad frame trembling like a leaf in autumn wind. The papyrus scroll lay open before him on the sun-warmed stones, its official seals and careful script declaring his freedom in words that seemed to dance before his eyes. Around him, the other household slaves watched in stunned silence, their own dreams and fears reflected in their master's unprecedented act. "I don't understand, Lord," Theo whispered, his voice breaking like pottery dropped on stone. "What have I done? What crime have I committed that you would cast me out?" Lysander knelt beside him, ignoring the dust that stained his chiton and the shocked murmurs of his neighbors who had gathered to witness this strange proceeding. Up close, he could see the tears that tracked down the Athenian's weathered cheeks and the way his hands shook as they hovered over the scroll. "You have committed no crime," Lysander said gently. "You are free because freedom is your right as a man, not a reward to be earned or a punishment to be feared." "But where will I go?" Theo's voice was barely audible now. "What will I do? I know nothing but service. I have no family, no trade, no place in the world beyond these walls." The question struck Lysander like a physical blow. In his desire to right a wrong, he had perhaps created a different kind of cruelty. The terror of a man thrust into a world for which years of slavery had left him unprepared. Freedom without the means to exercise it was just another form of prison. "Then stay," he said simply. "Not as a slave, but as a free man who chooses to remain. I will pay you wages for your work. You will have your own quarters, your own time, your own voice in how the household is run." Theo's eyes searched Lysander's face as if looking for some hidden trap or cruel jest. In a world where kindness was often a prelude to greater cruelty, trust did not come easily to those who had learned to survive by anticipating pain. "Why?" he asked, the single word carrying the weight of a lifetime's worth of confusion and hurt. "Why would you do this for me?" Lysander was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the scars that were still visible through the Athenian's thin tunic. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of truth discovered too late, but not too late to matter. "Because every mark on your back is a mark upon my honor," he said. "Because I have been blind to suffering that happened in my sight. Because a man's worth is not determined by the city of his birth or the circumstances of his capture." He stood and extended his hand to help Theo to his feet, not the commanding gesture of a master to a slave, but the respectful offer of one free man to another. Because mercy delayed is not mercy denied, if there is still time to choose compassion over indifference. As Theo's calloused fingers closed around his own, Lysander felt something shift in the very foundations of his world. Word of Lysander's act spread through Sparta like fire through dry grass, carried by servants to their masters, by wives to their husbands, by children to their teachers in the agoge. By evening, the young warrior found himself summoned to appear before the Gerousia, the council of elders whose word carried the weight of law and whose displeasure could destroy a man's reputation as surely as bronze could shatter bone. The council chamber was a circular room of ancient stone, its walls carved with scenes of Spartan victories and adorned with the bronze shields of fallen heroes. Oil lamps cast flickering shadows that made the carved figures seem to move and writhe in silent judgment. 28 elders sat in chairs worn smooth by generations of use, their white beards and solemn expressions giving them the appearance of living statues. At their center sat Demaratos, the eldest among them, a man whose 90 years had been spent in service to Spartan law and tradition. His voice, when he spoke, carried the dry rustle of autumn leaves. "Lysander, son of Agesilaos," he began, each word measured and precise. "You have created quite a disturbance in our city. Citizens are talking of nothing else but your charitable impulse toward your Athenian slave." "Former slave," Lysander corrected, keeping his voice respectful but firm. "Theo is now a free man under Spartan law." A murmur ran around the circle like wind through grain. Demaratos raised one gnarled hand for silence. "Indeed, and in making him so, you have raised questions about the natural order that has sustained our city for centuries. If slaves can be freed simply because their masters develop tender feelings toward them, what becomes of discipline? What becomes of the distinction between victor and vanquished?" Lysander had expected this challenge, had spent the afternoon preparing his response. But standing before these men who had shaped Spartan policy since before his birth, the carefully rehearsed words seemed suddenly inadequate. "With respect, honored elders, I did not free Theo because of tender feelings," he said. "I freed him because slavery had become an excuse for cruelty, and I could no longer participate in that cruelty while calling myself a man of honor." Another elder, Alcibiades, leaned forward in his chair. "You speak of cruelty as if it were something new under the sun. The strong have always commanded the weak. The victor has always claimed the spoils of victory. This is not cruelty. It is nature itself." "Then nature is flawed," Lysander replied, the words leaving his mouth before he could consider their implications. The silence that followed was deafening. To question the natural order was to question the very foundations upon which Spartan society rested. To suggest that might did not automatically confer right was to challenge centuries of precedent and tradition. Demaratos's ancient eyes studied Lysander with the intensity of a hawk watching a mouse. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a new edge of steel. "You will recant this heresy," he commanded. "You will publicly acknowledge that your actions were the result of temporary madness brought on by too much philosophy and too little discipline. You will return the Athenian to proper slavery and submit yourself to purification rituals to cleanse your mind of these dangerous ideas." The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre, and Lysander understood that his next words would determine not just his own fate, but the fate of every Theo who might one day hope for mercy. 3 days passed in a silence that seemed to press against the very stones of Sparta, like the weight of coming storm. Lysander walked through his daily routines, training young warriors, attending to his estate, participating in the civic duties that defined a citizen's life. But those who knew him well could see the change that had settled over him like a cloak. He moved with the quiet dignity of a man who had discovered something precious and terrible about himself, and was still learning to bear its weight. Theo remained in the household, working alongside the other servants with the same careful attention to duty he had always shown. But now he wore a simple bronze chain around his neck, not the mark of slavery, but the symbol of free status that proclaimed his new position to any who might question it. The other slaves watched him with a mixture of wonder and fear, as if he had somehow transformed into a creature neither fully human nor fully divine. On the 4th morning, Lysander appeared before the Gerousia for the 2nd time. The same ancient faces regarded him from their worn chairs, But the atmosphere in the chamber felt different, heavier, more fraught with consequence. Word had reached them that several other households had begun to question their own treatment of slaves, that conversations were taking place in private courtyards about mercy and justice and the true meaning of Spartan virtue. Demaratos's voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of final judgment. "Have you come to recant your heresy, Lysander? Have you returned to reason?" "I have come to tell you a truth," Lysander replied, his voice steady despite the trembling in his chest. The scars on Theo's back were not put there by failure of duty or by just punishment. They were put there by men who confused power with righteousness, strength with cruelty. If acknowledging this is heresy, then I am proud to be a heretic. The elder's face darkened like clouds before thunder. "Then you have chosen your path. By sunset tomorrow you will be stripped of your citizenship and exiled from Sparta. Your property will be confiscated, your name struck from the records, Wait." The voice that interrupted came from the chamber's entrance, where a figure in a dark cloak had appeared as silently as shadow. As the stranger stepped into the lamplight, gasps echoed around the circular room. It was Archidamos, the king's own brother, a man whose word carried weight second only to royalty itself. "I would hear more of this young warrior's reasoning," Archidamos declared, his presence transforming the entire nature of the proceeding. "For I have been conducting my own investigation into the treatment of slaves in our city, and what I have discovered troubles me greatly." For the next hour, testimonies were given. Slaves spoke, haltingly, fearfully, but truthfully, of beatings administered for sport rather than discipline. Free men admitted to cruelties they had never questioned because they had never been asked to question them. The systematic nature of the abuse became clear. Not the harsh but fair correction of the disobedient, but the casual degradation of human beings who had been redefined as property. When the last witness had spoken, Archidamos stood before the assembly with the bearing of a man accustomed to making decisions that shaped the fate of cities. "The young warrior's actions have illuminated something we have allowed to fester in the darkness of our assumption," he declared. "If we are truly the strongest of cities, then we are strong enough to acknowledge when strength has become mere brutality. I propose that we establish new laws governing the treatment of slaves, laws that preserve order while preventing the kind of cruelty that shames us all." The vote, when it came, was closer than tradition would have demanded, but decisive enough to matter. Lysander retained his citizenship, Theo retained his freedom, and Sparta gained something it had not possessed for generations: the recognition that mercy was not weakness, but a different kind of strength. In the years that followed, the laws of slave treatment were indeed reformed, not abolished. Such a radical change would have shattered the economic foundations of the city, but tempered with requirements for justification of punishment and regular inspection of conditions. It was not perfect justice, but it was progress toward a more perfect understanding of what justice might mean. Theo remained in Lysander's household for the rest of his days, serving not from compulsion but from choice, and eventually becoming something no Athenian had ever been in Sparta, a trusted advisor whose counsel was sought by citizens and foreigners alike. His scars faded to silver threads, but his memory of pain transformed into wisdom that he shared with any who would listen. And Lysander learned that the greatest victories are sometimes won not on battlefields, but in the quiet chambers of the human heart, where conscience does battle with convenience and compassion struggles against the weight of tradition. For in the end, the measure of a civilization is not found in the grandeur of its monuments or the extent of its conquests, but in how it treats those who have no power to demand justice for themselves. In a world where strength was worship and mercy was suspect, one man chose to believe that true honor lay not in the ability to inflict suffering, but in the courage to prevent it when prevention was possible. And sometimes, when the stars align and conscience finds its voice, that choice is enough to change everything.